Sananda here. That's the way that the Ascended Master Sananda would appear in the trance channel that I used to see in Vancouver, Canada, many long years ago. So for those of you that don't know what Ascended Masters are, they are wise humans who have risen in their wisdom to such a great extent that they now reside in another dimension where they watch over humanity. And if you go on YouTube primarily, or you could Google, you can look up Sananda, Sananda. There are other ascended masters that you can look up, different personalities, and they have their wisdom teachings. So I just wanted to tell you, sort of this, I think everyone has got a script in their life. I don't think for most people, do they ever go off script? Well, maybe it's another discussion. But some people say that before you incarnate on the planet, you chart out what your life is, who you're going to meet, and maybe you've got some life goals that you're going to try and set. And this is basically why your life goes as it goes. And you have other souls that you make contracts or agreements with that you're going to play the part of the mother, the father, the sister, the brother, the child, the friend, the teacher, and various other archetypes of characters in the great play of your own life. So while you are the star of your own life, all the other ones in your life are the stars of their lives. So we're all great stars starring in this great, well, Sananda called it a great play in consciousness. So that was basically my first introduction to Sananda. He said, our time in here, it's like what Shakespeare said, we're actors on the stage and, playing our roles in this great play called Planet Earth at this current time frame. Okay, so Sananda I didn't know anything at all about what a trance channel or a channeler was. I had no idea. It was a new term to me. I had no idea when I first went to somebody's house and the trance channel person was there. Hello, my name is so-and-so. And he kind of explained what was going to happen. And for him, he would close his eyes and meditate. And then his body would kind of jerk. And then a new personality would arrive in the body and speak for 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. And the energy in the room would change. Sometimes it was a very strong energy and you just almost want to fall asleep. It was such a strong energy. It wasn't a negative energy. It didn't feel awful or horrible. Never felt horrible. It was either it made you feel really sleepy, tired, or you were alert and able to ask questions and listen to lectures. Some days I would just feel so zonked out in the energy, or for a little while I'd be zonked out in the energy, and then later on I would tend to wake up and I would be able to pay more attention. It wasn't always the same, but it was never a negative energy. Okay. Let's see. So some of the key points that I want to bring out for you about what Sananda said. He said it was harvest time. Okay, so harvest time. Harvest time is a time for you to find mastery. Time and again, Sananda came back to using the words becoming a master. And that's what ascended masters are. Mastery. I don't know if I can give you in, 2 sentences what mastery is, but if you think of the greats in sports, Wayne Gretzky in hockey, everyone knows who he is. He's a master of hockey. And you can find the great masters in any sport. Babe Ruth in baseball, for example. Pele from Brazil in soccer. Legendary characters. So these are masters in their fields. And, all the different other kinds of fields. Albert Einstein in physics, etc., etc. So mastery in generally different fields. With Sananda, it's spiritual mastery. So in order to become a spiritual master, I don't think you can take a weekend course. You can't. It's not I don't think. You can't take a weekend course and become a spiritual master. It is a spiritual journey. And I suppose in the eyes of someone beginning the journey, there are masters who might have been on the trail for, I don't know. I was going to say 20 years, but if you really read a lot, as I do, the book The Red Lion, and Maria Zepes, S-Z-E-P-E-S, in her book The Red Lion, it was lifetimes to be on the path of a spiritual person. Are you one of those spiritual people? If you're watching this video, I'm going to say yes. Are there people here that are brand new souls that, probably yes, that are not even aware of spiritual journeys? Probably yes. How do you tell the difference? Well, I don't know if you can. Because if you're here, you're on a spiritual journey, whether you know it or not. If you are a materialist person that's living on concrete, planet Earth, you might not consider your journey here on planet Earth a spiritual journey until perhaps 3 more lifetimes from now. It's very difficult to say. And to assume that someone who's working the checkout at Walmart is not a spiritual person, you cannot. And someone who is a fireman or any particular occupation, you can't assume one thing or another because you don't know what's going on inside their noggin. But for the purposes of the Sananda thing, if you talk to an ascended master when you were younger, you were picked. You were picked, and I was picked by whatever picks you to come to hear the words of Sananda. And if you want to hear Sananda, are you going to hear Sananda? I don't know. You're hearing me. Am I an ascended master? No, I'm not. But I've talked to the Sananda. So, you're getting certain things secondhand, and then you're getting my whatever I say. And it's for you to consider before you turn off the video and decide to move on to something else. So harvest time is a time that you come into mastery. And it has a lot to do with the timing of the great movements of the stars. Which came first, the movement of the stars or harvest time? I think it's a bit of a game. But it is currently a time of, even Donald Trump calls it the Great Awakening. I'm not sure if Donald Trump calls it a spiritual awakening. I don't think so. I think the Great Awakening for Donald Trump is people, I think it's a slogan. Let's make America great again. It's a slogan. I don't think he understands it from a spiritual perspective, but I would have to sit down with him and get a lecture. And he apparently hasn't given any spiritual lectures. If he has, then I'm wrong, and I'm not a know-it-all. But, when you see him lecture from the podium in the White House, he doesn't seem to be much of one for giving spiritual lectures. So I don't think his Great Awakening is a spiritual topic that he will go into. Perhaps it's the awakening to the great corruption that we see in governments and things. But he might be just using it as a political ploy to say the Great Awakening is that the Democrats are all corrupt. But everyone knows that both Democrats and Republicans are incredibly corrupt and have been forever. So what else can I tell you about harvest time? Well, in other words, other people use the term ascension or earth ascension, changing from 3D Earth to 5D Earth, the fifth dimension. In other words, a great leap forward in consciousness. And God knows, if you go to any bookstore and you go to the self-help department, these self-help departments have been around, I assume, for hundreds of years. I assume there's always been wisdom teachings that you could go to and pick up a book on, how to help yourself and, the wise words of the great ones in history. And, there's been all kinds of the great books of wisdom of the great ones of the planet. And it's not necessarily the Christian Bible. You can go back to ancient Rome and ancient Greece, the great, if you could find biographies of great people from Aboriginal societies, there's no one place where you find wisdom. You find it everywhere, in every different culture. China had great ones, Lao Tzu and Confucius. From every continent, far and wide, there were wise wisdom teachings. So if you are on a journey of mastery, if you're one that likes to read, that's something you can do. You can read wisdom books. And if you don't like to read, then you can listen to wisdom lectures on YouTube or audiobooks. On television, do you get wisdom teaching? Not so much. On the History Channel, I don't think so. It's mostly entertainment. And it's been a long time since we had a really good wisdom teacher on television. And I don't see it. So regular mainstream television, don't bother. Can you do it on your own? Oh yes, that's how a lot of wisdom teachers got to be wise. They left society. And in the olden days, it was much easier to leave society. The world was much bigger. Before we had airplanes, telephones, and internet. the world was a huge, vast place, and it was pretty easy for you to sign on to perhaps a sailing ship that was going to go to the far side of the world and go on a great adventure, or for you to just leave the city and go to the country far from the madding crowd. So, in today's world, it's pretty much impossible to do what the wisdom teachers of the past did. You can still, I suppose, go on a road trip. And the thing is that in a road trip, it's very hard to escape the media. Virtually impossible to escape the media. And unfortunately, the media poisons your spiritual journey because it's constantly trying to pull your attention away from your focus on wisdom and spirit, and it wants to drag you into stupidity, high idiocy, wasting your time, and, well, you know what it's like. You can't go anywhere without knowing what's going on. And is that part of your spiritual journey now? Only to recognize that there are these entities that are trying to grab your attention and ruin your path to mastery by diverting you off your path. So, where do we go from there? Do you want to buy into this being a great time, a harvest time? You could do it for yourself. You can say that I am on my personal journey of mastery. I am learning to become a spiritual master. And then you can go on Google and look up spiritual masters and, get a number of examples you can read through and try and figure out if there's anyone here that's at all like who you think you are, role models. Maybe you like a few, maybe there's some that turn you off. But, do it for yourself. Is there a group thing going on? Among a group of people, yes. There is, on planet Earth, groups of people who are working on becoming spiritual masters. Absolutely true. Is everyone on planet Earth here for harvest time, ascension to higher dimensions, becoming a master? To my eye, it appears no. It appears that there are plenty of people on the planet that have no idea at all what they're doing here. If you are a spiritual master, Sananda said, your job is to be a way shower. So that is your mission to planet Earth, to be a way shower, to explain to others who are at all interested on what is going on the planet and what you can do about it. So what is going on the planet is, Sananda used to put on a funny voice, and he'd kind of go, it's the Illuminati, who are the cabal of evildoers on planet Earth, who have run the planet forever and are trying to retain hold of the planet. So if you don't know what Illuminati are, the cabal is what David Wilcock, W-I-L-C-O-C-K, calls them. We used to call them the 1%, but basically They're the moneyed class who have the aristocracy in the olden days, etc., etc. Are they all Illuminati? You might as well say yes. You might as well say yes, because I don't see any of them who are spiritual leaders. If people from another planet or star system or galaxy, universe were to come to planet Earth to meet with leaders of planet Earth, if they were really dumb, they would come to meet with the political leaders. And that was the story of after Roswell, which was 1947, the crash of the alien craft. And the stories are that some extraterrestrials came to meet with the presidents of the United States, perhaps Truman, Eisenhower, and that's about it. But a wise group of extraterrestrials wouldn't bother with the politicians, because if humans can't get anything done with politicians, extraterrestrials wouldn't either. So they would look for the spiritual masters of the planet to contact. And that is why quite often the UFO phenomenon is also something that is interesting to people who are on a spiritual journey, because they look around on planet Earth and don't see very many spiritual masters, and they look at the sky and see, unfathomable numbers of stars and figure, well, there's got to be a lot of spiritual masters up there in the star systems. And, if they're more advanced than us, then quite likely they can get here and, help us on our mission to planet Earth, which is to make this a more spiritual place. Now, everything here is spiritual, but plenty of people who are not spiritual people will laugh at you and say, no, it's just physical Earth. There's nothing spiritual here at all. But if you take the long view of multiple lifetimes, if you believe in reincarnation, you are on a journey, and the goal is to hit harvest time and ascend to higher dimensions where you can help people without having to be stuck in the mire of it all. So we don't see Ascended Master Sananda taking a physical form here on planet Earth and teaching. He teaches by finding channels who will let him come through and talk. Let's see what else. So the great harvest time is possibly right today. When are you going to change your consciousness? What does a change of consciousness feel like? Well, it doesn't feel like, going to I can't describe it. Because by describing it, it's not this, it's not that, I'm limiting it. So, the great spiritual journey is either in one or two directions. One direction is to more light, love, wisdom, and intelligence, more beingness. And if there are two directions, the opposite direction is the road to hell. But the road to hell, believe it or not, is actually a spiritual journey. And the Dark Cabal, The Illuminati apparently even know that when they go on the road to hell to further evil, that in their minds, they have been given some bullshit and bafflegab that somehow that they are going to profit from it. Don't follow the Illuminati down the road to hell. But many do. Because the road to hell is materialism. It's forgetting that there are other beings here, human and otherwise, and basically serving yourself. In other words, being a pig at a trough and shoving all the other pigs out of the way so that you can get more and more and more food to fill your fat pig face. That is the road to hell, and if you think of the traditional vices, the 7 deadly sins, well, that's why they're deadly. And is it true? For the most part, yes. Some of them are kind of medieval, the idea of, celibacy and things. But, if you were going to pick between that and take a look at them anyway, they're still very real. I don't have a list of them here for you, but you can look up the 7 deadly sins. And, laugh if you want, but consider them anyway before you throw them away. Anything else about harvest time and ascension? Are we expecting a new world? Well, Eckhart Tolle wrote, his second book was called A New Earth. So if you haven't read his first book, A Power of Now, read it first. Read The Power of Now first, and then if that resonates with you, move on to A New Earth. But other people say Power of Now is the first one you should read, because you might not get A New Earth unless you've got the foundations from The Power of Now. There are copious numbers of books available. What's good and what's not? Well, I've read so many of them, I pick and choose. You can't become a spiritual master with one book. I'm trying to figure out if St. Francis read any other books besides the Christian Bible. I don't know. So I'm trying to figure out if there was only one book, it was the Christian Bible, and St. Francis had only that book, become a master could he, say Yoda. Well, I never met St. Francis, but if you read about him, he was very bizarre, and he walked down the side of the riverbank and fish jumped. Did that really happen? I don't know. I wasn't there. So, best thing to do is trust yourself. In the end, wisdom teachings are fine and dandy, but you have to apply them in the real world, planet Earth, full of its corrupt politicians, corrupt corporations, corrupt people, and quite a lot of good people, too. You must take in the information that either you get in your meditations or that you've read in books or heard in lectures, and you got to see how you can apply it to the world as it is. See what works and see what makes you feel good inside. Because if being the evil emperor brings you to a wealthy position as the head of a corporation, Big Pharma, for example, are you proud of being the evil emperor, Mr. CEO of name any big pharmaceutical company? If you are, I'm going to say you're incredibly narcissistic. Grandiose, narcissistic asshole. For the rest of you who are not, silence. Because even when I talk to people using words, it's fraught with difficulties. Because English is a language of duality. You and me. And when you're trying to talk about anything, you know how easy it is that you're trying to get your point across and people misinterpret it. And that is the problem with languages of duality. So you can seek refuge in silence. Thank you for listening. I am the Ascended Master, Sananda by proxy, Bobby Burrows.